Today was an interesting one. Some things went up, some things went down. But on the SPY, what I'm noticing is we kind of have a way to go in either direction that we're going to talk about as we get into that technical analysis for the SPY cues, Apple, Tesla, Amazon, NVDA, and AMD. Let's get into it. First off, I think it's important to go through what happened this week. It seemed like we consolidated sideways and we head up, and then we got some back and forth price action for pretty much the rest of the week when it comes to the SPY. And what this is creating is it's actually creating some kind of consolidation up here, right? It could be a triangle wanting to head higher. But really, if it's going to head higher, I think there's two scenarios we can pay attention to here. And just before we get into that, let's just realize that once we got up towards that weekly expected move, what happens? We see some selling come in, and then we actually make it all the way up towards it one more time, and we see that selling come in one more time. So that is why these weekly ranges can be very useful to you. We tagged it like pretty much on the nose on the SPY here, and we landed back within our range, which is what we land in 68% of the time. So as we do look at whether this can go higher or lower, there's kind of two scenarios that I'm seeing. So if we wanted to say, this is some kind of consolidation in here, we have this, and then we have this, maybe to give us some kind of, wonky head and shoulders in that shorter time frames to then head higher in the near future. Maybe we go up and hit something like 492 next week. We're going to have to look for those ranges. So tune back in on Sunday because we're going to give you those ranges for the SPY Sunday night. Okay, so subscribe. Thank you so much if you already are. If this thing wants to go down, what you'd notice is we see something similar on the other side because of this wonky price action. We actually do have a left, we have a head, and we are possibly, making some kind of right shoulder in this area using this liquidity from the left shoulder. So this is overall how it would break down. And where would that really break us down to? Well, we can kind of measure that out and say, oh, okay, we would most likely break down to, somewhere around 483, which would fill this gap. And we'd have to see the other time frames to see if that is actually turning around. We do have divergences across the board down here. So we're starting to, get close to that center line, and we can look for some bad news to come, and then we can get that negative trend to begin. But that's what's very important. Let's wait for some negative news. You have these divergences, but we need some bad news to push them down into negative territory. Q's a little different story. This here has been filled, right? This gap has been filled. The thing that I'm noticing with the Q's is we do have some potential flagging in here. If I just draw one across, draw a trend line, and then use this to create another one, you can see that, yes, we're most likely flagging in this area. Okay, we're not seeing breakdowns through this. We're seeing some tapering off. And what this could do is, if we start to build some liquidity down in this area where we went sideways to then head higher over here, most likely we would see some buying up to fill some kind of cup, and then we get some kind of handle to head higher in the future. This is why I'm really going to be paying attention to those weekly ranges. You guys know that January 31st is what I'm really paying attention to, and I think it could really, really take some people by some surprise as we are getting all of these new all-time high headlines. What we can look for in the near future on the Qs, just to point it out, is you see this MACD is down in this negative territory, but if we curl up, we're going to be back in positive, which means we have a chance to test this high. We have a chance to make a new one at that point. So when this does curl up, we could get that positivity, but if that is short-lived, and maybe that's when Wednesday the 31st comes into play, we'll actually see a big point of divergence down here, giving you a triple divergence on the MACD, on the RSI at the same time. Okay, and when they're all at the same time, that's when they're pretty good. Okay, so we want to pay attention to that, wait for some bad news, and then we can see this thing really get into a negative trend. But at this point, looks like we're just consolidating. Apple, we were saying how it's kind of just, a man walking up a cliff, and sometimes we like to drop out of that cliff pretty quick. Now, we're not dropping out of it very quickly, right? We're seeing some bigger swings to the downside on this. So if I go into a 15-minute, it's going to be in a negative trend right now. But we need those higher time frames to get into a negative trend. What I'm really going to be looking for on Apple as of next week is, we know that, at least if you've been following this channel for quite some time, thank you if you're subscribed, first of all. But second of all, when we do see Apple break out of an important zone, it likes to tap inside of it to then head higher. So this just tells me maybe this is consolidation sideways. Maybe we do get a touch in this zone, find some buyers down in here, kind of like we did in the past, use that to then create another new high in this run right here. That overall would give us some kind of big divergence. Most likely, I would look at that on an hourly chart, but that's what I'm really looking for in Apple. I think you have a good chance for this to drop a little bit lower and then ping off of this little zone here to gain some support to head higher. There's a lesson to learn with Amazon as we look into a 2 hour, because we've been paying attention to a 2 hour this week, is don't try to bet on these divergences before they confirm, okay? We need to really have these confirm before we start to think, hey, I know the 2 hour does like to roll over that daily chart, that daily MACD, but if it just continues to trickle higher and not cross, we're not necessarily confirming that at this point. So we are seeing this trickle upward. If I go into a 30-minute, we're going to see divergence. But the important part here is the lesson. The lesson is we need some bad news behind these divergences. And then the other lesson would be patience, right? We have to be patient and wait for our signals to really confirm, or else we can kind of be hurt by little price movements like this one. Now, if with this divergence does play out, when we're right around earnings, we're right around January 31st, we could see this go into a negative trend pretty quick on a 2 hour, which just tells me if it goes into a negative trend pretty quick on a 2 hour, hey, look for that daily. Go look at your daily charts, because we could be seeing that roll over, which means some bad news for Amazon. Tesla, I'm just going to pull up a 1 hour here because we were talking about how there's divergences here, but we do not trade around earnings, okay? Even though I was saying, hey, this thing does have that good potential for a bounce. It's in a good liquidity area. It's in a good support zone here. We do have divergences, right? We need that good news in this scenario to burst us higher. If we got some good news from here, you can see how dramatically we've been just kind of selling off. We would have gotten a big reaction out of Tesla. This is why we stay away from earnings. We got that to drop off during this week, and it's just hanging out down there. This could be consolidation to head lower at this point. NVIDIA is a good example of that too. We've seen NVIDIA gain some big strength, and up here is consolidation. Let's just tackle that first. In here looks like some consolidation. We could have some kind of triangle in here that then bursts out to the upside. And as we are in positive territory, if this right here wants to roll up, this MACD, then we will see it test this high or go make a new one. Okay, so I don't necessarily think a lower high would come out of this. I think that we are consolidating. There's still some excitement in this. And we could see this make one more run higher before we see it drop off. So that's something to pay attention to with NVIDIA. You're really in an area up here where it would be very diligent to at least take some profit off the table. Obviously, you guys make your own decisions, but for me, that's just what I would do in this scenario, because we're outside of that monthly expected move, which is somewhere way down in here. Okay, now this is the good example. Let's see these divergences. We see this divergence on the MACD right here, and we see that on the RSI at the same time. The problem here is we actually don't get any bad news, okay? So this is where I'm saying, yes, we have divergences between all of these highs, but we don't necessarily have the bad news. So when that curls over, you notice it is not able to get into negative territory. Now we're seeing those divergences start to form again. I believe we're going to make maybe one more, and then we can start to see if this thing wants to pull back down and go into a negative trend on this hourly chart here. So this is really what I'm paying attention to on NVIDIA, and overall it's just a good lesson. Hey, if we remain in positive territory, you're going to see more positivity. So with these divergences, you should know, hey, at this point, this is turning back up. It's kind of getting rid of my divergence at this point, and we're in positive territory. I should wait for my next signal, maybe even look at a different stock until I see some weakness coming. AMD, similar story, right? We just see this trickling upward. We see us remaining in that positive territory. And as of right now, we do have that divergence on the MACD and the RSI at the same time. The problem with this is it's not necessarily that dramatic of selling. This still could be some kind of consolidation. We filled a gap, right? So we actually could see this head higher into next week, and I'm really going to be paying attention to those weekly ranges. And you guys know that I have updated my Patreon. It's down in the description, and I am covering AMD on those weekly ranges for you. So if you want those, just click the link down below. But it looks like this could have one more push higher and really solidify a divergence in the really, really recent price action. Then I'd be more confident, especially going into January 31st, that something bad is around the corner. DLT is still holding that signal. So we're still seeing those yields hold a little bit higher levels when we're still in that area where we could see some kind of bounce, right? We're within some liquidity here and here. We could see some kind of bounce out of this. But will this be short-lived? Okay, so will this be some kind of short left shoulder here? Maybe we get a head, and then we get another short right shoulder before we actually see those yields go higher based on the Fed saying they're not going to do as many rate cuts as we have priced in right now. So we still could get a reaction, and if those yields want to start to head up and TLT head down, we actually could see the market come down too, because it really affects those tech stocks. The VIX we did a really good job with, honestly. This week, the VIX, we've been doing a pretty good job with it because we just stated how, yeah, there's some divergences on here on a 30-minute, and I like my 30-minute divergence, but I don't see any news coming out that'll really affect the market, so it's most likely going to go down into this bottom of this range. Test it one more time and see what happens. Guess what? We get a test, and we get a big reaction. So we get a big reaction, and what do we say? Well, we have some divergence here on a 30-minute that we can pay attention to. And guess what? Shortly after we talk about that, we start to see that fade and drop off. So this is overall, we did a really good job with the VIX this week if you were paying attention to it. And congratulations if you're able to get anything from it. But right now we just need to pay attention because we're in a positive trend, right? We're in a positive trend at this point. We really would like to see this get into negative territory to continue that positivity. Maybe get another test here, maybe even come all the way down to 1212. We know how we like to get those reactions out of 1212, create some kind of maybe even hourly or 2-hour divergence down here that really makes us want to turn up. Because if we get volatility to turn up one week, you'll notice how close we are to positive territory. Okay, so this is on the daily here, and we're really, really close to that positive territory, and we could get this to cross. If we bump it up one more time, we're going to talk about this on Sunday, so please come on back. We have a huge divergence here on the VIX with the weekly chart. Okay, we have a huge divergence, and if this is able to cross, we could see some serious pain in 2024 and get some reactions that we haven't seen for about a year now. All right, so I know the main takeaway has been very similar almost every day this week, but it is we are in the danger zone. We have divergences, but we really need that bad news to flip us into a negative trend. Thank you guys so much for watching it all the way through, liking, subscribing, commenting. You guys have been great. Thank you so much for joining my Patreon. You guys have been great across the board, and I hope you just have a really good weekend and we can come back and talk about this stuff on Sunday and get ready for the week ahead. So good luck trading in the week ahead, but right now I hope you have a good weekend, all right?